Hey everybody, Flux Atomic here. Rebels is back, and it's back with a vengeance, man. This hour-long episode, Season 3, Episode 1, killer. Loved it. If you doubted Ezra was going down the path of the dark side, the first 10 minutes of this new season should make you think otherwise. This episode exceeded my expectations before the first commercial break. We're introduced to an older Ezra who balances risk and strategy, who doesn't sweat the details and goes with his gut. He was smart by telling Chopper to jump off the ledge and not use the rockets to alert the stormtroopers. Ezra basically comes along and massacres every stormtrooper he sees in this first episode. He uses a blaster and lightsaber combo for most of them to take him out, But then he shows us that he's grown stronger in the Force and implemented it into his arsenal. Ezra was so aggressive in turning the walker against the stormtroopers that you actually, at least I did, felt the same panic that they were feeling. They died thinking their own stormtrooper turned against them. Their friend basically killed him and then was just thrown off the ledge by an Ezra who was embracing the dark side, pretty much. When Kanan confronts Ezra about the use of the Sith holocron that he's so secretly been hiding and training away from Kanan, Ezra basically goes full Anakin. They both want power to help those that they love, but I personally believe that Ezra be led astray. He just has to be so controlling. He's tired of being like the fifth in command. He finally wants to be number one. He wants to make the decisions. He wants to call the shots. He wants the crew to follow his lead. After watching this episode, I'm just so interested in seeing his development as the season continues. But to be honest, to me, he seems like he's going down that annoying teenager route again. When the station they were on was losing power and it was falling down out of the sky, Ezra kind of slipped up a little bit, and honestly, at that point, I was so annoyed with him, I just kind of wanted him to slip off the ledge and die. Not to mention, with the way things are going to be going this season, it honestly wouldn't have surprised me all that much if they decided to do a huge twist right in the beginning of the season. Ezra tries to show he has strategy, but he ends up losing the Phantom, part of the Ghost ship, and that means the Rebels are already down a key element in their strategies. Maybe in this season, Hera is going to get a new ship. Speaking of ships, in this season we finally get to see the Rebellion versus the Empire, and we see that the Rebellion's gaining size. We get to see how it all builds up to a new hope. Now we get to talk about probably my most anticipated and underlooked character of the season, and that's the Bendu. The Bendu is all that I wanted and more, and thank God we're going to get more of him. A Force presence like the Bendu has been missing since the Clone Wars when the Jedi visited Mortis. I always wanted an on-screen addition to the mythos of the Force, its origin, and new ways to utilize it. Star Wars needs to show the spiritual side of the franchise to explain the Force, and Rebels is a great window of the canon for the hardcore fans like us to watch and build on it. I think that the Bendu is likely to become the Yoda of Rebels. Bendu seems to be a master of the pure essence of the Force in between the light and the dark sides. We see that he can contact Kanan and yet also open the Sith holocron. He seems to be a master to Bendu, and that's awesome, right? And it seems from the preview that he's going to be teaching Ezra a thing or two as well. Bendu is going to force Kanan to overcome the challenge of being blind, and likely complete his training in a way we haven't seen a Jedi do before. I'm just really glad this wasn't a one-off throwaway character. I want to see this continue and help the franchise and the mythos of the Force continue on. And finally, let's talk about Thrawn. I'm not a guy who read the Thrawn novels, but I did know the hype, did the research on the type of character Thrawn was, and I wasn't disappointed. Thrawn is now a Grand Admiral and notes he's close to the Emperor. His voice is definitely unique, and honestly, you might have to pay close attention to some of the words he says just to be clear of what he's saying. But of course, why wouldn't you be? His plan is to turn the rebels against themselves. With conflict developing between Ezra and Kanan, he might just get what he wants before he even expects. He doesn't know what's going on between those two, even though they did seem to patch things up at the end of the episode, which is good. This episode was a nice little sampling of Thrawn, and we get to see what his grand vision is, so we're definitely going to see more of him in the future. But speaking of villains, we haven't even seen Maul, and Ezra was already so close to the dark side. He basically said he doesn't need Kanan, and acts as if the holocron is his master. Of course, it turned out that Ezra did need Kanan after all. There were a few things in this episode that I also wanted to talk about, just briefly. It's really good to see Hondo back for this episode, and that he hasn't changed a bit. That's always a good thing. I think everyone really likes Hondo. I certainly do. One surprising thing in this episode is that we got to see Agent Callus. He was back and apparently hasn't given up on working for the Empire just yet, even after that episode with Zeb, where it seemed he was contemplating, what he was doing in the Empire and how much he was valued. I'm probably not the only one that caught this, and I'm surprised I didn't hear any mention of it on the Star Wars show on YouTube, but Zeb says "That's so wizard," which is a reference to Kitster from episode 1. I also noticed that Sabine has an owl painted onto her shoulder. It was one of those owls that we saw when Kanan was on his way to see the Bendu, and it also rested on the Bendu's shoulder. I assume it's some kind of force owl thing that recognizes when there's strong force presence and it just kind of appears. I'm not exactly sure. The owls probably have some ties back to Mortis, like I mentioned earlier from the Clone Wars, but we'll have to wait and see if they expand on that. But everybody, it was so good watching this show again. I missed all of these characters, and when we jumped right back into it, I was fully invested. The next episode, we're going to get Maul too, and we're getting more Bendu, and he's going to train Ezra. I'm so hyped, guys. But I've got to end it here, because I think that's all I have to talk about for this episode. Make sure you tweet me about it at FluxAtomic or message me on Facebook. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel because I'm going to be talking about Rebels every week. That's the plan. So you can find all the links in the description down below. I really appreciate you guys listening and having the Star Wars conversation with me. And we're going to have a great season. I feel it. Let's do it. See you guys later.